Welcome to class. In this unit, we are going to take a deliberate step back from the stories you have just heard. Those situations may not feel subtle, even reasonable, and that reaction is precisely why they matter. In many real research contexts, ethical problems do not announce themselves clearly or dramatically. They rarely begin with an obvious sense that something is wrong. Instead, they often begin with decisions that feel understandable, practical, and even necessary at the time. Very often, researchers only recognize that ethical dimensions of their choices after distance has passed. Looking back, they realize the difficult moment was not a single dramatic decision, but a series of small, reasonable steps that slowly move the work in a particular direction. Each step, taken on its own, seemed harmless. Each step felt aligned with expectations, deadlines, and practical constraints. So, in this unit, we are not starting with judgment. We are not starting with rules. We are deliberately shift perspective. We are moving from concrete stories to a set of ethical judgment lens. The focus here is not technical compliance. It is about how researchers recognize ethical lenses and ethical issues before they harden into violations. This shift matters because once the situation is already framed as rule of violation, it often becomes defensive. Reaction becomes harder, and learning becomes more limited. Before we go any further, it is important to clarify what this unit is not about. This is not about the lesson on writing techniques. It is not a review of citation formats, and it is not a checklist of rules to memorize or apply mechanically. These elements certainly matter in academic work. Now you will encounter them elsewhere throughout your training and professional life. However, if we focus only on technique and rules, we risk missing the deeper ethical dimensions of academic writing. Technical correctness can sometimes create a false sense of security. Researchers may feel that as long as formal requirements are met, ethical responsibility has been fully addressed. In reality, many ethically significant issues arise precisely when writing looks correct on the surface. This unit focuses on ethical judgment. It asks how researchers think about responsibility when they write, especially in situations where rules do not give clear or intermediate answers. Many important ethical moments in academic writing occur in gray areas, where guidelines exist but do not fully resolve the situation. If we wait for rules to tell us what to do, we may already be overlooking something important that deserves reflection. In academic ethics, the problem is always not what research did. The problem is how the research is written and how it is understood by others. Writing is never natural. Every choice in which writing shapes interpretation, whether the author intends it or not. What you emphasize, what you summarize briefly, what you placed in the background, and what you omit altogether, all influence how readers understand your work. Each decisions feel minor during writing process can accumulate and shape a reader's overall impression of the research. Over time, these impressions influence how the work is cited, trusted, and built up on. Very often, ethical problems begin here. Long before anyone talks about misconduct or violations, a piece of writing can gradually guide readers toward interpretations that the researchers did not explicitly intend. Yes, yet the responsibility of those interpretations still rests with the authors. Understanding this can help us see why ethical judgment in writing requires more than simply following the rules or avoiding obvious mistakes. It requires attention to how meaning is produced through writing. To make sense of these issues, we will use 3 ethical lenses. Think of these lenses as different ways of looking at the same pieces of writing. Each lens highlights a different kind of responsibility that researchers carry when they write. Each one draws attention to a different kind of ethical risk. These lenses are not answers. They do not automatically tell you what to do in any given situation. Instead, they ask you ask better and more careful questions when situations are ambiguous and when ethical stakes are not immediately visible. They slow down the moment of decision and create a space for reflection. By applying this lens, researchers can notice ethical tensions that might otherwise remain invisible in everyday writing practices. This is especially important in environment where the time pressure, evaluation criteria, and performance expectations push researchers toward efficiency rather than reflection. These lenses do not replace judgment. They support it by making responsibility more visible. The first lens is ethical representation of research. Writing shapes interpretation. The same study can be understood very differently depending on how it is written and framed. Tone, structure, and emphasis all influence what the readers take away from a piece of research. In academic research, imperfection is normal. Limitations, uncertainty, and mixed results are part of real research. No study is complete, and no analysis is final. Those features do not weaken research. They reflect the reality of scholarly inquiry and ongoing knowledge development. The ethical problem is not so imperfection. The ethical problem is misrepresentation. Misrepresentation occurs when writing leads reader to believe that research is more certain, more complete, or more generalizable than it actually is. This can happen subtly through confident language, selective emphasis, or downplaying of uncertainty, even when no data has been fabricated or falsified. Under this lens, the key question is whether the writing gives reader a fair understanding of what the research can and cannot support. The second lens is attribution to intellectual contribution. Citation is not only about words, it is about ideas, structures, and reasoning. Intellectual contribution includes how the arguments are built, how concepts are connected, and how problems are framed within the research. Even the text is paraphrased correctly, an ethical issue arises if readers reasonably believe a key idea, framework, or line of argument is the author's original contribution when it is not. This situation can occur without any intention or mislead, especially when ideas are deeply integrated into the overall structure of writing. What matters mostly here is reader's perception. How does the writing represent where intellectual work comes from? When the idea is synthesized, summarized, reorganized, attribution can be blurred. This lens reminds us that ethical attribution requires more than technical citation accuracy. It requires attention on how intellectual ownership is communicated through the overall presentation of work. The third lens is responsibility to reader and the scholarly community. Academic writing is a public act. Once research is written and shared, it enters a wider academic conversation that extends beyond the intermediate context of the course of degree program. Others may cite it, extend it, critique it, or apply it in contexts that others did not anticipate. The way research is written shapes how others understood it and how they build up on it. These downstream effects are part of the ethical landscape of academic writing. Ethical responsibility does not end with grading or with satisfying a supervisor's expectation. It includes responsibility for how research may be used and how it may be misunderstood or misused. This lens reminds us that writing always has consequences beyond the classrooms, beyond evaluation, and beyond the author's original intentions. At this point, one thing needs to be very clear. These lenses are not rules. They are not a checklist to be completed and set aside. They are tools for ethical judgment, especially ambiguous situations where the rules are not enough. They help us notice early warning signs, moments when ethical responsibility may starting to slip. Even if anything still look technically acceptable, small choices in writing repeatedly over time can accumulate into a large ethical effects that are difficult to reverse. By using these lenses, researchers can become more attentive to their own writing practice and more reflective about the responsibilities they carried as authors. This kind of awareness is essential in maintaining integrity over time, particularly in complex research environments where pressure and expectations are always present. This brings us to an important question. If these ethical issues are so fundamental, why are they so easily overlooked in real research situations? Why do reasonable, well-intentioned researchers sometimes make choices that later become ethically problematic? These questions point beyond individual intention. They invite us to consider the environment in which research is produced and evaluate. Time pressure, role expectations, and available tools are all shaping how writing decisions are made, often in subtle ways. In the next unit, we will examine the pressures, rules, and the tools that make these issues easy to miss and difficult to confront. For now, the key point to carry forward is this. In academic writing, ethical problems rarely come from breaking rules. They come from forgetting who we are responsible to. End of this section.